In today's episode, I am talking about vetting funnels. So this has to do with, this topic came up as an idea for a podcast episode based on a recent conversation that I had with a woman who asked a very common question: why do I attract X type of guy? And it got me into this whole conversation about this idea of who we attract and why or how. My main thing is this idea that anyone can attract any type of person initially, right? Meaning, like, if it's just somebody who you see, whatever, at a bar, at a grocery store, whatever. If there's any physical attraction, we can attract a guy who turns out to be, to this person's point, to this woman's point, emotionally unavailable and or financially irresponsible. Also, sorry, side note, I sound a little funny today because I had my wisdom tooth taken out a few days ago and I'm still recovering, so my speech is a little off. Anyway, so what I said to her was, anybody can attract someone who's emotionally unavailable and financially irresponsible, because these are not things that you know about someone immediately. These are not things that you know about someone when you first come across them on a dating app, or when they slide into your DMs, or when you say hi to them or they say hi to you, out in public, right? So it's this idea of, like, I always attract this type of guy, I think is very disempowering to us, to people, to women, and it takes a more passive approach than it really exists. You actually have more power. I talk about this with women all the time. We have more power than we give ourselves credit for in the dating world. Yes, it sucks when you meet guys who are wasting your time, who don't have their stuff together, all of these things. But the reality is, nope, you can't make somebody be something. But you can absolutely determine who you give your time and energy to. So anybody can attract a guy who they come to find out is emotionally unavailable, financially irresponsible, abusive, insert any of the things, any of the qualities or traits you wouldn't want, right? But it's about what you choose to do upon finding that information out. Do you still choose to entertain that person, to give them your time and energy? And the answer so oftentimes is yes. And that can be for many reasons. But one major reason is because you are not dating that person in a way to find out helpful information before you are emotionally attached to that person. And I want to be clear, we're talking about humans and human behavior and emotions. So there is not some just solid objective rule that's going to guarantee that you are not attached to somebody, by the time you find out information that's not helpful. By no means. I'm not sitting here guaranteeing that. But I am sitting here saying there are things to do and not do to lessen the likelihood of being so attached to somebody that you don't let go of them, or it is very hard to let go of them by the time you find out other information. So I say that to say, this got me into a conversation with this person around, like, vetting funnels. And it was something that came to me as I was in conversation with her. But this idea that the most we can do, like, we want to focus on the things we can control, right? So you cannot control who a guy ends up being, how he behaves, or any of that. You can do your best to put yourself in situations and positions to be more likely to meet the type of guys that you want to date. So we were talking about this idea of financial responsibility and emotional availability. And I was like, those are two aspects of a person that are in different pots. Financial responsibility is more of a practical behavioral thing. Emotional availability is an emotional mental health thing, right? And you are more likely to for a practical thing like financial responsibility, you are a little more likely to see that earlier on than maybe someone's emotional availability. And of course, this can shift, obviously. But what I mean here is I'm thinking of like this idea of coming to find out that somebody is not emotionally available in the ways you need or want them to be. Might be something that you find a little later on in the process than how that person spends their money or what their how their money circumstances look. And I do want to be clear, we differentiate it between someone being necessarily financially secure even. Like, so financially responsible being more about how you handle your money, paying your bills on time, saving, how you spend your money, and not necessarily it being about the amount of money you have. But I made the point that when we are looking at putting ourselves in positions to be most likely to meet the type of people that we want to meet, this idea of amount of money does come into play. But so what I explained about vetting funnels is that part of this conversation was like her asking like how do I even meet people? Like where do I go and things like that. And if you listen to a recent episode of the podcast, I talked about your social buckets. So this very much was that was a part of this conversation. I was like, create your ideal partner list. Always step one, ladies, always create your ideal partner list. And then identify places and spaces that person is likely to spend their time. And you go to those places and spaces. That is virtually online places and spaces. That is in-person places and spaces. So that's certain online groups and websites and things like that, but it's also in-person places. And so I talked about this idea of, yes, financial responsibility and financial, let's say, abundance or security, like having a lot of money, are two different things. You could find somebody who makes a lot of money and is horrible with their finances. You can meet someone who doesn't make a lot of money and is really good with how they manage their money. But I was like, when you're at the beginning stages of trying to date someone, you start by just, where am I more likely to find this person versus this person? So we talked about this idea of bars and stuff like that. And one of the things she said, she's like, oh yeah, I know like a bar is not a good place to meet people at this point. If someone asks for my number at a bar, I don't even bother talking to them. I was like, I get your point, because your experience has been meeting a bunch of guys at bars who turned out to, again, be, financially irresponsible and or emotionally unavailable. I was like, I like to think I'm a pretty decent person and I like a good bar myself. Now, the types of bars you're going to are going to attract certain crowds, generally speaking. So I was like, one of the things you can do to increase the likelihood of meeting someone who, and now listen to me carefully when I say this, who makes a certain amount of money, so that you can then funnel, vet out and get into a funnel of those who might be responsible with that money. The way to increase the likelihood of that are to go to bars and lounges that cater to a clientele that makes more money. Which is to say, it does not automatically mean that this person is going to be financially responsible. Also doesn't automatically mean that they'll be emotionally available. But again, that's a little farther down the line here. What I'm getting at is, you start with this wider, bigger funnel of going to bars, restaurants, establishments, events that are going to cater to people or be more likely to have people who have a certain amount of money or are more financially secure. You meet some people there, and then you're going to find, of those people, there's going to become a smaller funnel of those who actually spend their money well, save their money well, manage their money well. Right? And this is stuff that you'll be learning about a person as you are dating them, going on dates with them, talking with them, doing things with them, getting an understanding of their values, philosophies, thoughts, behaviors, right? You're also going to be learning about their emotional availability or lack thereof as you are dating them. So this also brings in the idea of the importance of dating. Just a lot of tenets that I talk about all the time. You need to date. You need to casually date. You need to do an ideal partner list. You need to get outside and be online, increasing your likelihood of meeting people. And you need to empower yourself. You need to be, I guess, more proactive in your own process, which is to say, It's not just, oh, I attract these type of people. You can attract all the types of people, but who you give your time and energy to is what ultimately matters. What you don't get to escape in dating, and I know we so want to, is the frustration, the annoyance, the pain of meeting people who are not right for you or are not particularly good guys. But what you do get to do is control your time and energy and attention and say, ooh, you know what I realized? No, this doesn't work for me. You are very financially irresponsible, and that's not something that works for me. That's not on my ideal partner list. You don't want the same thing that I want in terms of a romantic relationship, so that doesn't work for me. And if you are dating a person, and ideally, again, casually dating a couple of people in the early phases of dating someone, then you are going to be lessening the likelihood of getting too emotionally attached to that person that by the time you find these things out, it's a much harder thing to pull away. And like I said, there is no foolproof method here. Not at all. But there are definitely things that you can intentionally do and not do to help yourself out. So what I'm saying is this idea of, oh, why do I attract this type of person is a fair thing to feel and be like, oh my gosh, it's annoying and frustrating, because wouldn't it be nice if just the people I met, the guys I met were, checked off my boxes? That'd be great. But, oh well, that's not how this works necessarily. But you can become better and better at vetting the guys you meet to determine if they're worth your time and energy. And I like to think of this in terms of vetting funnels. I'm going to go to the places where I'm more likely to meet the type of guy that I've identified on my ideal partner list. Then I'm going to, funnel the guys I meet into smaller and smaller funnels. So I might go somewhere where it's like, oh, yeah, he seems like he'd be a financially secure guy. Or I might go to a place where I like, outdoorsy things. And so I, part of a hiking club. So he checks the box that he's into hiking. That's wonderful. But now does he check the box that, yeah, he's financially responsible? Does he check the box that he's emotionally available? Does he check the box that he is thoughtful and considerate? I mean, you start funneling down more and more and more. But you first put yourself in the places and spaces where you're most likely to meet people who match some of those more practical outward things that you can learn about someone quickly and easily. The types of hobbies they do, things like that. So this was just my word to you about empowering yourself, feeling more empowered in your dating process, recognizing that you have more power in this process than you may realize, and giving yourself more agency when we think about who we attract, and thinking of it more as anybody can attract any type of person, but not just anybody sticks with just any type of person. You vet in and out of your dating pool who you give your time, energy, and attention to. And you go to places where you're most likely to meet certain types of people, and you funnel from there.